y'all, it's Hope at Crafty Hope, and I am continuing to show y'all what I created for ICAD 2019. Now, the challenge ran through June and July, and it's over now, but I have the information about it below. It's done by Tammy Garcia of Daisy Yellow. And each day, Tammy provided us with prompts along with weekly themes. I didn't use the themes, but I did try to use the prompts. And this first one is card 52, and the prompt for it was friendship. So I kind of had a general idea for it, and that was I took some of the Tim Holtz paper dolls. Those will come into play in a little bit, but I also wanted to use the colors gold and silver because I don't know, I was in the Girl Scouts and we used to sing a song that was make new friends but keep the old. One is silver and the other is gold. So that's why I'm going with the gold and the silver. The first thing I did was glue down some book text with an Oohoo glue stick. And then I tried to put down some of the silver, but I realized it just wasn't showing up, and I knew that a black surface would work a lot better. So I went ahead and added some texture with a little bit of masking tape and then put black gesso on top of that to, like I said, give it some texture. And that really stands out. I really like how that gesso comes through in there. So once that was on there, I brayered on both my silver, first my silver and then my gold acrylic paints. Now these are, I can't even remember the name of them, System 3 something acrylic paints, and they worked beautifully. So I got those on there, made sure I dried my the paint and everything really well. And then what I'm going to pull out is I did these like paper and fabric stacks that I sewed together while I had my sewing machine out one day, and they're great for just pulling out when I want to, I don't know, make something stand out. They're great for framing up words or something like that. And I found some words in the Tim Holtz small talk stickers that say this is what family looks like, because a lot of times friendship are like families. It's sometimes you're closer with your friends than you are with your family. So I thought that kind of worked in some senses. Now the words that were on one of the pieces of paper on my little stack there stood out a lot, so I just scraped on a little gesso on there and dried it real quick so my sticker would stick. And then I've got, like I said, I've got that little paper doll and just two girls that are dressed alike, and they very well could be sisters. And so it kind of applies in both ways. That sentiment is both family and friends, because sisters tend to be sometimes the best of friends. So, friendship comes to play quite a bit in this. And I used matte gel medium to glue down both my little girls and my little stack there. And I let the sticker just stick as it was, and that was it. Super easy card, and it's really beautiful. It's one of my favorites. The prompt for card 53 was note to self. And so I had a general idea of what I wanted to do, and I wanted to use a post-it note, because a lot of times when you use a post-it note, you're leaving a note for yourself. So I started with just the underpaper, which I think is just a paper bag or some craft paper that I had been using, and I actually used it in this last card, and I glued it straight onto my 4x6 index card with my Oohoo glue stick and tore off the edges. And it is all kinds of crazy and fun, but I knew I had that post-it that was really going to pop, so it didn't matter that the background was kind of crazy, and I decided to add to it with some of my hand-carved stamps and some distress oxides in a couple different colors. I think abandoned coral, spice marmalade, and maybe fossilized amber. I can't ever remember that yellow color. I think that's it. And so I'm just putting those in there. You don't really see those at all in the background when I finish this up, but it just adds a little more chaos. And then I wanted to pop of like some black to it, since there wasn't a whole lot of that on the card. So I used a water soluble Sharpie paint pen to just add some little plus signs around on the card, and a purple Neocolor 2 with a little bit of water scribbled around. And then there's my post-it. Now these are just like the smaller size ones. And I pull off the side to write down my phrase, my note to myself, which is going to say, I'm possible. So I go ahead and I start writing out with a pen, and I didn't really like that. So I have these Stabilo fine tip markers that I'm writing it out on. I love the phrase, I'm possible, because it takes the word impossible and kind of claims it for yourself that, nothing's impossible because you are possible. So I don't know, it's kind of corny, but I love it. Now, since Post-its are removable, I did put a little bit of the Oohoo glue stick on there, but I'm also taking a bit of embroidery floss. Now, this was already from some other project. I had a little length of purple embroidery floss on my needle that I was like, well, I'm just going to use that. So I went in through the back, and I'm just going to make a couple of X's across the bottom of that Post-it to kind of help stick the Post-it to the card a little bit more. Like I said, just some X's. That tends to be the easiest thing for me to make with the embroidery floss, and it adds a lot of texture and some interest to that. And then I'm just going to tie that off a little bit on the back, and then I'll put some masking tape over the top of it to really secure it. Now, if you've seen some of my other cards, you've seen I've done that before. And I'm inking up the edges with just a black ink pad there. And I'm taking another one of those Stabilo markers and just adding some scallops around the outside of my Post-it to frame it just a smidge. And that's really it, guys. Again, super easy. Card for this video is card 54 with the prompt shadow. And I knew I was probably going to use my Stabilo all pencil because it makes the best shadows on things. But to start, I am just collaging stuff. I'm using some of the paper I cut off from the last card and just whatever's on my desk. I knew that I wanted to, I don't know, write something on there and just put a shadow around it. But I wanted a nice background base, and I really love using up all these scraps and not throwing them away. I'm such a recycler. I don't know, it's my passion. I can't look at those little scraps, as my friend Tiffany calls them, little giblets or giblets, and throw them away when they are perfectly usable for something like this, especially for my backgrounds. It's my jam. So I've got that on there, and I've got some Deco Arts gesso that I start by putting it all, just straight onto my brayer, and it really doesn't, I don't know, push all that stuff into the background enough. So I'm going to use my palette knife and just scrape it on a little bit thicker in a few places to make sure that that background is definitely pushed into the background. I didn't want any of that to be a focal in any way. So once I got that on there, of course I got the gesso everywhere. It's all over my fingers. So I cleaned that up. And then I'm going to dry that really well because I knew that my next step was going to be right on there, and I wanted to make sure it was all really dry. So you see me, I tested, I realized there was more on there, so I am drying it some more. And then I'll pull out again that same black Sharpie paint pen. Now it's again the water soluble one, and I am going to write the word dream on there. Because it seems like some of that isn't dry yet, so I'm having to make my marks over off the side to get some of the gesso off of my paint pen. You see I started in the middle with this. I didn't leave quite enough room for the M on the end, but I like to start in the middle with stuff like this to make sure that it doesn't run off the edges. And that was my method with that. So I wrote out my word dream, just some big blocky letters, not perfect, but hey. It's hand lettering. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's my art. I can make it whatever I want. So there's that Stabilo that I knew I was going to use, and I am seriously just going around those letters on the right side and underneath as if the sun is shining from the upper left, as you do with shadows. And then I'm going to just take a fairly thin paintbrush there with just some water on it and add that shadow. Now this is a process. It's going to take a little bit of time, but in the end, I don't know that you completely get shadow out of this, but it was a lot of fun to do it. It's such a simple card, but it really does make a statement. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I thought I was going to, sorry, I was going to just leave the dream open like that so that the shadow was a little more prominent and you could see it, but I don't know. I inked up the edges again, added that kind of adds a little frame and a shadow to the outside, but that wasn't what I wanted. So I'm going to put this card down and come back in a little bit, and I've grabbed these Marabou art crayons and decided I'm going to do a rainbow pattern down inside of those letters. I always forget about these Marabou art crayons. I've got them in that container and they're not where I can see them, but they're fun to play with. I love anything water soluble for some reason. I know that's not a lot of people's thing. They like things that stay put, but I love when I can get colors to blend together. So I am, like I said, putting these down in a rainbow order. I've got just about every color of these crayons I could find when they went on clearance at Hobby Lobby. So, so then I'm going to take a pretty stiff paintbrush and try to blend these together. Now, this was a learning experience for me because I found, especially in that R there, that I just had too much water on that paintbrush. You see over on the edge, I'm having to rub some of the water off. And this process goes a little bit faster once I realized that the drier that paintbrush was, it needed to be a little damp, but really the drier it was, the easier it was to get those colors to meld together. So that was a learning process for me and something I'm definitely going to try again because it was, I don't know, the end result is really yummy. Just, oh, I don't know, rainbow sprinkles or something. Just yummy. So that's it for these cards. Once I get these blended, that's it. If you liked this video, if you like these cards from me, give me a thumbs up. You know, make sure you subscribe so you can see what else I've got going on. And thank you so much for coming by and watching. And I hope that you leave me a comment if you do have any questions. All right, guys. Thanks. Bye.